Hey everybody, it is Saturday. I'm in the parking lot at the gym. Wrong side. See? One Life Fitness. This is me, still trying to keep my New Year's resolutions going, people. Working hard. This is the calm before the storm. There is no storm. It's 45 degrees. I guess it's all coming later. But at this point, you're seeing it. It's Sunday morning. Hopefully, you have power. Hopefully, your kids are okay and everything is not stir crazy at this point, right? Hopefully you stocked up on all the bread and milk, because bread and milk is just the things that we desperately need when ice is coming, right? That's what keeps us alive. But I wish we were together. We can't be, so this is the best we can do, is me in the parking lot trying to make technology cooperate with me. So we've been talking about community, all about it. We've talked about acceptance. We've talked about empathy. We have talked about authenticity. And so I'm going to quickly try to wrap it up today as we talk about conflict. Conflict, everybody's favorite subject. Now, you got to pretend that we were going to have a full 30 minutes together to really play out some of these scenarios. I was going to get some amazing crowd interaction. Just imagine that this is the greatest message you've ever heard in your life. But now you have it on video, so if you need to go back and watch it again, that you can. But I'm going to come over here and I'm going to start from the beginning, really with this case for community, which is why we've been talking about it in this series. Tyler Staton says the way of Jesus essentially involves relationship, because without community, there is no way for us to grow to become more like Jesus. So, hey, we could all withdraw from community. We could all say, you know what, it's easier for me to be by myself, or I'm going to get some AI robots who just cooperate and do whatever I want or whatever I say. But community is where we live out love. This is where we live out the fruits of the Spirit. This is where we grow. This is where we replace lies with truth. This is where we experience acceptance. It's all the other things that we've talked about. However, when we hit these moments of conflict, that's the natural tendency for us at those points to be like, I'm out, I'm withdrawing, I'm backing away. And so back in the day, there was a monk, Benedict, and he was observing people who were just kind of moving from community to community. So he created something called the vow of stability. This was a radical commitment to live a rooted life in a fixed place among an imperfect people. It was a vow to take the good with the bad in one community over the long haul. And we're just saying that there's no perfect place. It is easier to withdraw from community, but this is where we go to grow. This is where we go to speak into each other's lives with objectivity. What's fractured in relationship can only be healed in relationship. This is where we go to create the neural space for joy and safety, for us to become healthier people, to grow more like Jesus. And so Benedict saw this, and he created this vow of stability, which is like, hey people, it's easier for us to shop around, jump around, bounce around, but we are going to get in one place. We are going to plant our roots, and we are going to grow in that one place. And so what happens in relationship is where the fruit of the Spirit begins to take place in our lives. Most of the fruit of the Spirit is relational. And, this is the byproduct of us abiding. We can't get any closer to Jesus than we already are. But the byproduct of his Spirit working in our lives are the fruit that he produces, we don't produce. And so I highlighted two of them: kindness and self-control. Community is a great place for us to practice kindness and self-control. Another place where we can practice that is in conflict, when it comes to conflict. So maybe for you this year, you just can pray, God, when it comes to the people who are close to my life, will you just produce more kindness and self-control in me? Hey, when is the last time you prayed for kindness and self-control? When is the last time you spent an exorbitant amount of time asking God to really produce that fruit in you? By the way, this is also helpful for people who are not within your close circle of community. Kindness and self-control with customer service people, with your kids, teachers, and coaches. It's just a good practice overall. And when you look at the love chapter, which is all relational, I remember one time I did premarital counseling with a couple who I was going to officiate their wedding. Now, they had already done premarital. They were already in these groups, and I said, you don't need to meet with me. And they said, no, we told our parents we would meet with the preacher at least once. And so because I was officiating the wedding, I knew kind of the anchor chapter, like a lot of weddings, was 1 Corinthians 13. And so I said, all right, let's look at this big, long chapter because we're going to talk about it in the wedding. And then I said, you know what, just take the first two and just work on those. Love is patient, love is kind. And they said, well, what do we do after that? I said, well, after that, you can either move to the next one, or at that point, you might be dead. You might have hopefully died of old age at that point. So just practicing patience and kindness in community would just be a great 2026 goal for some of us. Utilizing, asking for more of the fruit of the spirit of kindness and self-control in our relationships might be just a big 2026 play for some of us in this room. So sometimes, however, conflict isn't just a communication problem, it's a nervous system problem. Now, people have all kinds of different conflict styles, right? Depending on what was modeled for you growing up, depending on your personality wiring. Some people run toward conflict, some people run away from it. Some people just say, yeah, you're right, so the argument will be over. Some people, the argument is never over, right? We all have different styles and different ways of approaching it. But one of the things that we don't think about a lot is how our nervous system comes into play when it comes to conflict. Under perceived threat, the brain shifts resources away from the prefrontal cortex, which is where decision-making and empathy, remember we talked about that in this series, and self-control take place, towards survival systems. This is why conflict feels harder to navigate in the moment than afterwards. This is why people will sometimes say, we got into this fight, I don't know what happened. I don't even remember what we said. It was such a small thing, it wasn't a big deal, and it just blew up out of nowhere. Sometimes this is a nervous system problem where our brain gets stuck in these loops, or our body is frozen because it's dysregulated. We've never learned to live in regulation. We've never learned to handle conflict from a standpoint of mental health regulation. Our body just goes into freak out mode, and therefore we never learn skills to do it in a healthier way. It's like think of an electrical box that is overloaded. Our system is fried. There's too much going on. And so we can't approach conflict in a healthy way because we are not regulated enough to be able to do that. So for some of us, sometimes the best thing we can do when it comes to conflict is to learn how to be regulated people, to learn grounding techniques, to create this neural space for more joy and safety, to interrupt these loops, to take the Iron Man suit off so we can learn to be more present with our bodies, with our emotions, in the moment, listening to people, practicing all the other things we've talked about in this series. The Apostle Paul said, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Well, as far as it depends on some of you, it may mean, to work on your emotional regulation, because that's what's going to come before effective communication. My computer almost fell over right there, just that if you're hearing sounds in the background. So the best way maybe for us to work on our effective communication in conflict is to learn what it means to be emotionally regulated people. That's a whole nother series for a whole nother time. Podcast, books, everywhere. We got a lot of great counselors in our church who could help you with that. But some of you, man, it's like as soon as conflict shows up, you put the Iron Man suit on, you go into dysregulation, fight, flight, or freeze, and it's impossible for the conflict to get anywhere. It's like trying to drive on ice. What a very appropriate metaphor for what's happening in our lives right now. By the way, I think my parents may have had some version of this car at some point in my childhood. Maybe not that color, but I'm like, yeah, that car reminds me of my childhood. And that snow does not, because I grew up in Georgia. But trying to navigate healthy conflict while we are emotionally dysregulated is like trying to drive on ice. It's trying to steer on ice while we're skidding. It's just very difficult. Now, with all that being said, I do want us to talk about some practical ways to think about it when it comes to conflict. Is first of all, being humble. Get rid of all bitterness, rage and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ God forgave you. And so sometimes to approach conflict from a standpoint of humility. Hey, I may be overly sensitive here. Hey, I may be overreacting, but I just wanted to bring something to your attention. Hey, I may have totally misread the situation. I may have misperceived what was happening here. Hey, I may be blowing this out of proportion. So I just want you to know that my goal as we have this conversation is to work through this. You start from a position of humility, and then you're honest. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. So if we start humble, hey, I may be overreacting here. I may be taking things out of proportion. Just want you to know, I just want us to grow closer through all of this. But I want you to know that what you said hurt my feelings. But I want you to know being left out hurts my feelings. I want you to know I have an expectation for you to empty the dishwasher, and you're not emptying the dishwasher. That is honesty. That is bringing assumptions to the forefront. This is talking clearly about what's going on, being honest. And, do you know what the next verse says in this passage? I don't know if it's the exact next verse, but it also says, in your anger, do not sin. So we don't mistake honesty for rudeness. We don't mistake honesty for throwing flames at people. I told my daughter when we were younger, Lila, I said, hey, we can talk through anything. We can work through any conflict. We can disagree. Just don't be rude. So we can work through it. We can hash it out. We can go back and forth. You can give your point. I'll give my point. But there's no excuse for being rude. So be honest. I don't want to guess what you're thinking. If you're upset, I want you to tell me about it. But we don't have to be rude. And then be helpful. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs. And so it's just saying, hey, I may be overreacting here, but what you said hurt my feelings. Is there something deeper going on? Am I misunderstanding something? Did you mean something different than what you said? Like, let's try to get somewhere with our conflict. Let's try to figure out some emptying the dishwasher etiquette so that we understand what we're going to try to do moving forward so we can actually accomplish something. Conflict, the thing about conflict when it comes to community, and I'm giving some tried examples, but I'm really just trying to give you some categories, is conflict can actually deepen the things we've talked about in this series. It can deepen authenticity. It can deepen acceptance. It can deepen empathy. And you can grow much, much closer to someone, understand them better, appreciate them more, and respect them more if you're willing to work through conflict with them. If you can be humble, if you can stay regulated without trying to drive the car on the ice, keep your emotions under control, and really try to get somewhere, it can be an incredible tool when it comes to community. You can learn so much about yourself. You get opportunities to practice the fruit of the Spirit. You get an opportunity to listen to somebody. So back to Lila, growing up, I said, hey, we can talk through anything, just don't be rude. And we would go round and round, probably way longer than we should. And at some point, I would say, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pause. I want you to give the bottom line of my side of this conflict, and I'm going to give it from your side. So you speak from a language of where you feel like I'm frustrated. I'll speak from a language of where I feel like you're frustrated. And this allowed us to really literally get in each other's, situation and see things from the other person's perspective. And a lot of times we're like, all right, that made sense. And we grew closer because we were people who could work through things together. Now, I'm gonna quote a great theologian, I think probably from the 90s, maybe the 80s, Rob Bass. And he said this: it takes two to make a thing go right. Some of you are ready to start dancing right now with this song in the background. But it takes two to reconcile. And some of you may be in situations with people who they're too dysregulated. You're trying to work through conflict with somebody, and their electrical socket is on fire, or they are driving on ice and they are too dysregulated. Maybe they don't want to reconcile. Maybe they don't want to work through things. Maybe anytime you bring up conflict, they go back to some 13-year-old version of themselves that is unhealed. And so all they know how to do is throw flames at each other. And so it takes two to reconcile, but it only takes one to forgive. So in that case, your option is to forgive. So remember the verse in Romans: as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. There's some stuff that depends on you, but there's some stuff that doesn't. And when someone else won't reconcile, that is your opportunity to forgive so you can walk out with peace. And again, we know a lot of these things are entire other series that we could talk about. We could do series on forgiveness. We could do series on reconciliation, but we are wrapping it up on conflict. So what you do when the other person, it takes two to make a thing go right, and when they won't make it right, you forgive. But then this illustration of water, and I don't know who the little guy is in blue over there on the shore, but I hope his parents are watching him right now. But water, you see water when it hits something. Oh, and I see I have the little X's, which means this is a non-copywritten photo. I just noticed that, okay? But we're just an illustration here, people, to wrap it up. Water, when it hits some sort of structure, a lot of times, like these rocks, it doesn't try to go through it. It just begins to go around it. And some of you are spending all of your lives trying to reconcile with someone who is too dysregulated to reconcile with you. You're trying to regulate with someone, I've said it many times now, who's trying to drive on ice. The electrical circuit is overloaded. So instead of that water continuing to try to go through it, it needs to branch off to the sides, which means you need to go find your community elsewhere, which means you need to go lean in other places where you can be known and accepted, where you can work on things. And don't get me wrong, you can practice the fruit of the Spirit with that person. A lot of it having to do with self-control and kindness. Love is patient, love is kind. And you're forgiving and all that stuff, but move outward towards people so that you're not spending your entire life trying to push water through some sort of, massive rock. Instead, it is branching out and you are finding your community elsewhere. So at this point, I'm going to try to figure out how to stop this video and upload it and get it somewhere where it can be transported to YouTube. I don't know if I'll do that successfully or not. So some of you may never see this video, but I want you to know, happy Sunday. Stay safe out there. I love you. I'm grateful for you. I'm proud of you. And for all my students who are watching, I'll see you next week at youth group. Love y'all.